someone insults you and you want to yell back at them. But you know that yelling, anger, that is not a great trait. That's not emulating God. So you contain yourself. You say, you know what? I'm going to let it go. You know what the Talmud says about such a person? The Talmud says that someone who was insulted and didn't insult back, you mean you were able to contain yourself, you held yourself, all of your sins are forgiven. Why? Why would all your sins be forgiven? It's an amazing thing. All of your sins. Imagine someone says to you in synagogue, right? So you decided to finally show up, and everybody starts laughing, right? And you're like, right? And you're all insulted. You're like, well, you wanted to answer back that you were here last week. You wanted to answer, right? But you're insulted. Everyone laughed. Everyone got a good laugh, a good chuckle. Yeah, like Gary, Gary with his jokes, right? And you're insulted to your core. Whatever it is, it could be on anything. And you don't respond. You don't respond. We'll talk about why this is so important. Okay, we'll talk about this. We'll have a long year ahead of us discussing all of these different traits and how they work. But where we left off last week is that a human being is vertical while an animal is horizontal. A human being is vertical because our mind needs to be on top. It needs to be our primary decider of how we act, while by an animal, they operate only by instinct. That cat, that little kitten, when it's 1 day old, you put it on the rooftop, it'll walk to the end of the roof. It'll know how to walk. It'll walk to the end of the roof, and it looks down, it sees there's a drop, turns around, walks away. Because it is born ba-ma. It's called behema. An animal is ba-ma. It has all of its instincts inborn from day number one. From the moment it is born, it has all its instincts. Now, its instincts get a little sharper over time, but the instincts are there. Human beings were born blah. Nothing. No instincts. Right? The only instinct we have is survival. So we know we need to eat. But that's it. It's the only instinct we have. Right? We don't have any way to run. We don't have any way to hide. We don't know danger. We don't know hot from cold. Nothing. It's interesting that Adam, we mentioned, why do we have the name Adam? Adam. So we know because the Torah tells us in chapter 1, I believe it is, or chapter number 2, it says, because God took Adam from the Adamah, from the earth. Right? So there's a couple of understandings to that. Number one, Adamah is earth. Earth, if you don't plant, nothing's going to grow. You don't go at the middle of some field that no one's ever passed through and suddenly find a beautiful orchard. Right? It doesn't work like that. Someone planted it. It doesn't just grow. You're not right in your backyard. You're not just going to have an orange tree growing if you didn't plant an orange. Okay, if you didn't plant it, it's not going to grow. That's Adam. That's man. If we don't plant, we don't sow, we don't grow. We have to work hard on something for it to grow. So that's the first comparison between earth. But there's another comparison, that it's not referring to earth. It's referring to something different. Adam, from the terminology Adameh. Adameh means to emulate. We emulate God. That is our job. Our job throughout our lifetime is to emulate God. God is kind, we're kind. God is merciful, we're merciful. God is forgiving, we're forgiving. And that's the idea. We have all the traits of God. The way in which God acts, we act. So Adam is coming from a very different idea of we're trying to emulate God. Okay? And that's the idea of Adam. But I want to talk about a few animals because it's very entertaining and very enjoyable to understand. The Talmud says that if we did not have a Torah to teach us character, because after all, what do we learn from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob? What do we learn from them? Right? There are many different traits that we learn from them. It's really traits, essentially. We learn hospitality, we learn kindness, we learn forgiveness, we learn prayer. There are many traits. Because we don't see any mitzvahs. We have to just step back a second. What is the Torah? So many think the Torah is a book of rules, right? The book of instruction. But that's not true, because you only have 2 commandments in the entire book of Genesis. You have, right, till you go to the 14th or 15th portion, which is deep in Exodus, you don't have really any significant mitzvahs. So you have 3 in Genesis, 3 mitzvahs in Genesis. Circumcision, right? Be fruitful and multiply, visiting the sick, and that's it. And then you wait all the way till Beshalach in Shmot, in the second book, in Exodus, in the third portion in the second book. And then that's where it starts giving us the list of all these mitzvahs. So this is a really poor book of. Imagine you open up the American Code of Law, and the first book is just telling you stories, right? You're like, give me the laws. Tell me 1, 2, 3, 4, right? No, that's not the way the Torah is. The Torah is not a book of laws. The Torah is a book of life. It's telling you how to live life. So the Talmud asks, if we didn't have the Torah, where would we get those life lessons from? Where would we get those messages of how to conduct our lives? The Talmud says we would learn it from animals. God gave us animals to teach us character traits. And I'll give you a few of them. It says that when Adam named the animals, he spent some time getting to know the animals. Because in the name of every single person, in the name of every single thing is the essence in Hebrew, right? When someone has a name, the letters can combine the characteristic of the individual. So if someone has a name, Avraham, okay, the name Avraham, because it starts with the letter Aleph, usually means, what is the letter Aleph? It's the first letter, but Aleph also comes from the word aluf. Aluf means master. If you look at the way the letter Aleph is written in the Torah, it's a combination of 3 letters. A Yud, and a Vav. That's the number 26. Yud is 10, and Vav is 6. That is God's name. And if you look at the top Yud, it has like a finger like this that points up to heaven to tell you Hashem is right above. Whenever you see the letter Aleph, it's referring to something spiritual. It's referring to a concept of godliness. So anyone who has the letter Aleph in their name is spiritual, has spiritual tendencies. And you take each letter and you derive its essence, and you have a name which defines this person, the character of this person. And it's very interesting. If you know 2 people, David, you probably realize there's some similarities, with those Davids, right? Like, they're similar a little, right? They're not the same, but they're similar. They have some similarities. It's not a coincidence, because your name defines your essence of who you are. Your Hebrew name defines the essence of who you are. So if you were to take an animal like a dog, man's best friend, which I think is the worst insult to humanity. No, I'll tell you why. And I have nothing against dogs. I love dogs. I think dogs are great. But to call that our best friend, that means that perhaps we're incapable of securing a responsible relationship. Let's understand what a dog does. So a guy comes home, he's newly married, and he walks into the house. His wife is so excited. They just got married. They just came back from their honeymoon. It's his first day back at work, and she's all dressed up. She's so excited. Her new groom is coming home for the first time. She's so excited, right? She gets all make-upped, and she's really excited. He comes home. He had one of the worst days at work ever. He's not in the mood of anything right now. He's not in the mood of seeing people. He's not in the mood of talking to people. All he wants is let me sit down, watch my sports, and I don't want anyone bothering me. Okay, so she comes to greet him at the door. Imagine this, right? She comes to greet him at the door, and she's like, "Hey, honey," and he's like, "I'm sorry, I really hate to do this, but I'm not in the mood for this right now. Okay, I really had a very difficult day today at work, and I just need to veg out a little. Okay, I need some time. Give me my television. Now, take a vote here. Who thinks she's going to come do that again the next day? Come and greet him at the door like that? Anybody? Nobody. I don't think so. Why? We know that women are emotional, but women aren't stupid. All right? They're emotional, but they also have a brain. And the brain tells them, it hurt last time. I'm not going to do it again. I don't like to do something that's painful a second time. Let's take that same scenario.
She has Rahmanas and she understands
Even if she has Rahmanas, still she'll be a little bit. I don't think it's a great idea to put everything on the line. All right? Women, you agree with me? Yes? Okay. So let's take a different scenario, okay? A guy comes home from work, had a difficult day, and greeting him at the door is his dog, excited, wagging his tail, jumping on him, and he says, "Bad dog! Go back! Go away!" Right? What happens 3 minutes later? That dog comes right back, wagging its tail like nothing ever happened. Right? Is that the only type of friendship we can handle? One that has no responsibility? One that has no, right? That has no accountability? Right? Man's best friend? I don't think that should be man's best friend. I think our spouse should be our best friend. I think our children should be our best friend. Our parents should be our best friend. One that has accountability. One that we can be responsible, accountable for. And one that's not just forgiving and forgetting. So let's take what a dog is in Hebrew. In Hebrew, we know the word for dog is kelev. And that's a combination of two words. Kol lev, all heart. It's all emotion. It's all emotion. So does a dog know what to do, when to do? It knows exactly what to do, when to do. But it doesn't have the intellect. It's smart. But it is what it is. It's controlled by its emotion. It's controlled completely by its emotion. And that is a dog. So one of the things that we would learn from a dog is how to be forgiving, how to be forgetting, and to just show that love without any, without any thoughts, without any doubts. Okay, it's not always a good thing. Again, but we have to learn what it is that we need to learn from each animal. Anybody heard of a camel in Hebrew? Anybody know what it's called? A gamal, right? A gamal. Gimel mem lamed. Gamal. And it's a very interesting animal because the trait of a camel is that it wants independence. It wants independence. That's it wants. I want to drink so much water, fill up those humps, walk through the entire desert, and not need to ask my master for water. That's what he wants. Independence. What word in Hebrew rhymes or comes from the same root as gamal? The word gemilut chasadim. We talk about acts of loving kindness. Gomel chesed. Someone who does acts of kindness. Let's take what is a camel? Independent. It doesn't want to ask for help. What is doing acts of kindness? Putting someone on their feet so that they don't need to ask for help. Right? They say better to teach someone how to fish than to feed them fish. Why? Because if you teach them how to fish, they'll know how to they'll have dinner every night. They won't only need your money tonight. So that is the difference between so that's what we learn essentially from a gamal, a camel, very ordinary animal, right? But extraordinary in the lesson it teaches us of what real kindness is. Someone asks you, can you help me? I'll give you an example of kindness. An incredible story of kindness. So a man once came to the rabbi of his community. This is back in Europe, and it was the eve of Pesach. It's right before Pesach. And he comes to the rabbi, he says, I need you to give me a halachic ruling. I need you to give me a halachic ruling. I don't have money. I really can't afford wine. Is it okay, instead of the 4 cups of wine, that I use 4 cups of milk? Okay, that was the question he asked. Now, when you hear this question from your congregant, you're all the rabbis. Okay, you're the rabbi. Your congregant comes to you and gives you this question. What do you hear from it? He doesn't have enough money for wine, and he wants to know if you can use milk. You know what the rabbi heard from it?
He needs some money.
If he's going to be drinking milk, he certainly doesn't have money for meat. Right? See, he gave him a larger sum than what he would just need for wine. He says, go buy yourself some meat too. See, the question, there's something you can learn about kindness. Is there something, how do you get this person past the stage that he's at? He's asking about the wine because he really means that. He's not asking for the meat. But you infer from what he's asking, he needs more than that. We'll talk about kindness. It's one of my favorite traits. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about kindness because kindness is such an essential trait. You know, my grandfather of blessed memory, in his book, when he talks about the trait of kindness, he says something so unique. He brings a verse from the Torah, which we just read 2 weeks ago. And the word says in the Torah, it says that when you see a poor person, see their lackings. See what they're lacking. So my grandfather presented the following challenge to his students. He says, I want you to go back after this session, and I want you to find all of your friends, your roommates, the ones sitting with you by the dining room table. I want you to find what their lackings are. Everybody, every human being has a lacking. Every human being has a lacking. One person needs a word of encouragement. One person needs a smile. One person needs a hug. Everybody needs something. Go, my grandfather told his students, go find the lackings of your fellow. And they would meet every week. He came back the next week. He says, so, how was it? And they had the most difficult time. Because you see, I grow up, every human being, I believe, is the same as me in this way, right? I know what I need. I know when I'm thirsty. I know when I'm hungry. I know when I'm tired. I know when I need the restroom. I know when I'm energized and excited. I have no idea when you're excited. I have no idea when you're hungry or when you're thirsty, except, by the way, people who are more spiritually in tuned. Women. The Torah tells us that women understand their guests. Right? A guy could be sitting with his friend for 2 hours schmoozing on the couch. The wife walks into the house. She just comes back from shopping. She's like, you don't offer him a drink? Don't you? Right? She understands he's thirsty. But he's like, what do you mean? We're just schmoozing. He can get drink. He knows where the drink is, right? Right? No. What the Almighty wants us to do is be godlike. Adameh. I will be godlike. I will emulate God. How to think beyond ourselves is really the goal. I know that I'm not thirsty. If I was thirsty, I'd get myself a drink. What about your friend? Why don't you know how to understand where your friend is at? I'll share with you one more story about kindness. My rabbi of blessed memory, Rav Beryl Eisenstein, grew up in Chicago, and he went, when he was a young man, he went to learn in the great Mir Yeshiva in Jerusalem. Now, I visited the yeshiva after not being in Israel for about 14 years, not living in Israel, not learning in that great institution. There's over 9,000 yeshiva students learning all day, every day. And we took a group when we went to Israel in February. We went to see the yeshiva, and it's unbelievable. I mean, you're seeing world-class Torah scholars, 9,000 of them. You walk into the room and you hear the noise of Torah. You hear the energy, the excitement. It's just unbelievable. So they have a building here and another building here and another building here. It's like this campus built into a community, right? So it's like embedded in a community. Any building that goes for sale, the yeshiva buys it. Right? They just need more study halls. They need more dorm rooms. They need more lunchrooms. We went there. They serve 14,000 schnitzels on a Tuesday. All right, this is an incredible institution. Unbelievable. And just studying Torah. That's it. Study Torah. This is like the Harvard, the Yale, and the MIT of yeshivas. Okay, all in one. You have the most brilliant minds there. It's really incredible. I'm going to be doing another trip in February. If you're interested, we can talk later. And we're going to go see the Mir Yeshiva. But my rabbi learned there, and his rabbi, they had time. There's a time where they sit and they have a lecture, and the rabbi's about to begin the lecture, and they have the lecture not in the big study halls. They have him in actually like a classroom, but the classroom fits about 400 or 500 people, and everyone's getting into the classroom. And it's about to start 1 o'clock. The class is about to start, and the last two guys come to the classroom, and they're looking around at the door, and there's no more chairs. So they both run out and dash to find themselves a chair. And the rabbi sees they come back. They each bring themselves a chair, and they sit down. So the rabbi takes his Talmud, and he closes his Talmud. He says, today, we're going to learn not the Talmud. Today we're going to learn kindness. And he talks about these two individuals who just walked into the classroom. They saw they didn't have a chair. They also saw, but they didn't pay attention, that the other one didn't have a chair. So here they had a perfect opportunity to get a free act of kindness. You bring him a chair, and he'll bring you a chair. No. Instead, they each brought themselves a chair. That's not kindness. It's the same exact act, but thinking about someone else. And it's free because you know they need a chair. They know you need a chair. You might as well just bring it for him. He'll bring it for you. And you get a free act of kindness. The problem is that we're not attuned to thinking about the needs of other people. And that's the problem. The problem is we're not in tune. We're not recognizing what are the needs of the other. Yes?
What about the guys who were already sitting there? Did the rabbi, when he closed his Talmud, mention that, not only for the two guys who were late, who could have seen it, interpreted their need that way, was the need of the other, but what about the guys already sitting down?
That they should have gotten one for them. Perhaps. I think this lesson, my rabbi told it to me about 40, 50 years after he heard it from his rabbi. That's how strong of an impact it made on him, that you need to think about someone else.
I mean, 10 guys could have jumped out.
And potentially they should have.
They could have bought 10 chairs for the people that are going to follow them later.
That's correct. Right? Bring the whole roll of chairs, right? 100%. But you understand? The idea is starting to think about another person. And this, we're all talking about a dog, right? About a dog who is, right, just learning that trait from a camel. Okay, what's another? I'll give you one or two more that animals that we can learn from, and then we'll continue talking about our Mussar traits. Another one would be a nimala, a little ant. It's called a nimala. You know what King Solomon, the smartest of all men, you know what he called a nimala? He says like this: Lech el nimala atzel, lazy one, go to the ant and see how it works. See its ways and become wise. Did you ever see an ant with the sunglasses on, sitting on a beach chair, relaxing, reading the paper? No. You know why? He's busy working. Do you know, King Solomon tells us, the Gaon of Vilna says that in his commentary on what King Solomon says here in this verse, he says that an ant needs one kernel to live through its lifetime. It needs one kernel, that's it. You see it get that kernel, it's going back to his nest, and that's it he needs for his entire lifetime. And it collects over 1,000 kernels throughout its lifetime. It only needs one to live. And he collects over 1,000. You know why? Not because he's a hoarder, but because his nature is to work. Amelut. Amelut comes from the word nimala. It's the same ayin, mem, lamed. The same root is to work. It only knows how to toil, non-stop. It can't stop. Sorry, can't help it. So King Solomon's saying, lazy one, go to the ant. Go see how he lives his life, and you'll become smarter. Non-stop toil. Work. You know why? Because human beings, that's what Adam le'amal yulad. A man was created for toil. You say, I'm retired already. It's okay. I can just, I'll just, no, it's a terrible. I have seen, anybody here, you're too young to be retired. All of you. So you probably won't understand. You won't be able to relate. But I've seen many people who have retired over the years, being here at Torch now 15 years. I've seen people who have been very productive people go into retirement and their health, they wither. In no time, a matter of months, and they're done. I've seen so many stories like that. And I've seen the opposite as well, where they've been invigorated to find something to do. They'll volunteer here, they'll volunteer there, they'll go here, they'll go there. They have a class, they have a meeting, they have someone, they're busy all day, and they stay healthy. The key to success in life is being busy. Yes.
Rabbi, one other observation. I don't know if you were going to mention. I was waiting for you to mention it. I read about King Solomon and his observation of the ants. He also said that when an ant drops his burden that he's carrying, the other ants go and help him pick it up, and that we should learn from that.
Yeah. So there are many. It's right. That's one amazing one is that they all work together. But also, they don't steal. Every ant has a unique scent. And once they touch their little morsel of food, their kernel of food, it gets their smell, and no other ant will ever touch it. Imagine if you touch something and it gets your fingerprint, and now someone says, "Oh, it's not my fingerprint. I'm just going to go move on." Right? Imagine we lived in such a great world, right? But they have that scent that's unique to them, and if you ever notice, they'll come walk by, right? If you ever looked at an ant, I don't know what you call it, a colony, right? So they walk in a straight line one way, they walk in a straight line the other way, and if one of them drops their kernel, everyone's going to walk right around it and continue going. They walk right around it and keep on going, right? It's not theirs; they're not going to touch it. Right? It's an amazing thing. Either way, thank you for bringing that out. So. That's one of the things we learned from an ant. Constant work, constant toil. We don't stop working. Just because we're older and we don't have our job and we succeeded in our career and we have a nice retirement, we have to keep ourselves busy. Adam la'amal yurad doesn't only say when you're young, work. Right? No, the idea is to toil. Find something to volunteer, read a book, challenge yourself, get a new career, something to be busy. The last one we'll talk about is a donkey. A donkey. So what is a donkey? A donkey is called in Hebrew, anybody know? Chamor. Right? A chamor is a donkey. Now, interestingly, the same word, the same root is chomer. Chomer means material. If you want to understand what materialism is, understand what a donkey is. Okay, so I'm holding here something which is material. What happens when I drop it? It falls, right? You grab it, that's material. That's what it is. It just falls. It has one purpose, and one purpose only. Okay? It's material. A donkey has no purpose. It's just material. Right? A sus, a horse, has a unique characteristic. It comes from the word sas. It's giddy. It's happy. It jumps. The way in which it runs, it gallops. Right? It has some royalty. It's regal. Okay, there's the characteristics of all animals. Everyone has something unique. What is a donkey? blah. It just schleps. That's what it does. You have a load you need to take, a burden you need to take from one place to another place, pack it on your donkey, and it'll schlep it. Does it have a character? No character. It's just material, right? If they want in a crass way, if people want to call someone unintelligent, they'll call them something with a donkey's idea. Okay, that concept of you're just blah, you're just right. You're just material. There's nothing spiritual. There's nothing unique. There's no character. Not using your mind. Just schlep. So, how does that relate to us? This is very interesting. The Talmud says that a very interesting statement. It says that Mashiach, our Messiah, is going to come riding on a donkey. And I don't understand. I mean, come on. Okay, let's be real, okay? We're almost at year 2019 right now. And you're telling me that Messiah, when he comes, he's going to come riding on a donkey. Give me a break, okay? Messiah today should be coming in a stretched limo or come in his private jet or, right? No, it says a Mercedes, right? Right? He'll come. I don't think he'll come in a Mercedes. German car, right? But like imagine, right? Mashiach today, Messiah will come riding on a donkey. That's ridiculous. Okay, I hear 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, before they had the automobile, before they had the locomotive, before they had on a donkey. That's crazy. So let's understand what a donkey represents. Like we said earlier, if a donkey represents materialism, it makes a lot of sense. Mashiach is going to come riding on a donkey, on the materialism. Look at the world we're in today. We're a world that is controlled by our materialism. The materialism is riding us. Right? We can't even wake up without looking at our phone. Right? Wherever we go, we're not looking at our phone. We're total slaves to our materialism. So who's in charge? Our materialism or us? Who's riding who? It's perfect for our generation. Mashiach will come riding on materialism. He will show us how we need to be in control of materialism, where materialism doesn't control us. Where our homes, our fashion, our jewelry, our technology, our cars, they don't control us. I'll give you an example. Anyone here ever buy a brand new car? Brand new car? You remember that excitement? You wake up in the middle of the night and you look, is my car still there? Right? Right? Is that someone near my car? Right? Was that a scratch? Right? Is that right? And we get all, why? Who's controlling who? I can't even sleep. I'm so excited. Right? That's materialism controlling us. Maybe. Or is that us controlling our materialism? I'll tell you an interesting story. My father, may he live and be well, he bought, I remember back in 1989, he bought a Toyota Camry. It was like you walked into a rocket ship. It was the technology was like, wow, right? All the buttons and it was just, I remember my father's like, welcome to the cockpit. It's like, he was so excited. My father was a pilot, so for him it was like also, it was like, So either way, I come in the first day and I was like, wow, just like that new car. It's like, so my uncle came to visit a few days later, and he needed to just run out to get something. So he asked my father, can I borrow your car? My father's like, sure. Gives him his keys. Didn't say a word. It's a new car, nothing. You can imagine, first time he's driving the car, he hits the front right light. Right? The front right light, the glass is broken, and comes back, and he tells my father, I'm sorry, your brand new car, but I a little hit the light. My father got rid of that car 5 or 6 years later. Never changed that light. Never changed that light. You know why? It's not controlling me. I'm controlling it. It's here to serve me. I had a neighbor who used to buff his car every single day. Now you tell me who's riding who, right? Every day. He'd pull out, he had a beautiful pickup truck, a black, beautiful pickup truck, brand new, just retired from his, he had a very nice career at U of H, and he'd pull it out, of his garage and get that scrub, and he'd wash it down like it was a little baby getting a bathtub. Every single spoke of the tire. He would go through. Now tell me, who's really in control of food? That was 3 hours of his day every day. Right? And I was his neighbor, like neighbor. And he told me, he says, I'm afraid that branch might fall. It might fall on my truck, right? Can you cut it down? So I was like, of course I cut it down, no problem. We were great friends, but is that really a way we want to live our lives? To be in control or be controlled by our materialism? That is a donkey. That's one of the lessons we learn from a donkey. Have something beyond just materialism. Be in control of the materialism. Any questions? Beautiful. Excellent. So Mussar is the ability for a person to maximize his potential. That's essentially what we're trying to accomplish. How do we maximize our potential? So the 4 animals we brought, of Kelev, the dog, the Gamal, the camel, the Nimala, the ant, and the Chamor, the donkey, are just a few examples of the millions of animals we have in this world, of how we would learn the Torah wisdom, the Torah knowledge of how to have a good character if we didn't have a Torah. But the purpose of it all is really to maximize our potential. So we have the real of who I am, where I am, and we're going to be doing this with all of our traits that we're going to talk about. So let's say the trait of kindness we mentioned earlier. So where am I with the trait of kindness? One of the people who did that list that we gave out last week, that chart, I didn't bring. I can get some copies made, hopefully, here at the office. But to rate yourself where you are with each of the traits. And so imagine your trait of kindness, you rate yourself and you're a 5 out of 10, so you're honest and you say, what, I'm not really that kind. I really want to be more kind. I aspire to be greater with this trait of kindness. So we have to know the real, where we are. Then we have to have the ideal. What would I like to be, right? What would I like to accomplish in this trait of kindness? And then we have me now. What can I achieve in my current situation with the tools I have now? With, not hypothetically. It's like, people say, right now, my business is okay, but ideally, I would like it to be over there. So now we're going to change everything to something that's not realistic. You have to take what you have with your manpower, with your people. Be realistic with who you are, what you have, so that you can accomplish the next step in a real and meaningful way. So with the Mussar traits, it's exactly like that. You don't try to say, oh, I went to the sermon. Did you hear the rabbi's sermon? He spoke about not speaking Lashon Hara. It's terrible to speak negatively about other people. That's it. I decided I'm never going to talk negatively about anyone else. And that lasts for about 4 minutes, right? Because right after the blowing of the shofar, you walk outside and you go to the guy, oh boy, he blew it, right? And he's like, so, and that's it. And there goes the Lashon Hara, right back into full swing. When we take on something that's insurmountable, something that we cannot accomplish, right? It does damage to us because we accept the thing on ourselves and it's not realistic, and then we say, I failed, right? And we don't want to feel a feeling of failure. We have to have a constant realistic understanding of our capabilities, of who we are, what we are, and what we can accomplish. And we're great people. Humanity, Adam, mankind is so incredible. We have such amazing abilities, but we have to be realistic. What can I accomplish? Can I say I'm never going to get angry again? Can I say I'm never going to be jealous again? Can I say I'm always going to be humble, I'm never going to brag, right? It takes time. You know what? I know where I am now. We took that analysis, right? I know where I'm at. I know what I want to accomplish, and now I have to be realistic. How do I take one single small step to accomplish that? We're going to talk about small steps in a minute. So, the greatness and power of change. It's very important to understand that in Kelm, one of the great Mussar centers of the world, they used to tell the students, We don't want you to become big and great and holy and righteous. We want you to change. Just change. Change is the most powerful thing we have in our lives, is to change. One little degree of change changes the entire course of our life. No one's saying change 180 degrees. Turn around, you're going east, go west, and just ignore everything you've done. No. Change 1 degree, you've changed your entire world. Change another degree, you change your... And we're trying to not change everything. Right? Don't focus on becoming better. Focus on change. Do you know, it's very interesting. We're entering into the days of awe. We're already in it. Every day since the beginning of the month of Elul, 2 Sundays ago, we blow the shofar in synagogue every morning. And it's to wake us up. It's to give us a wake-up call. You know, it's almost Rosh Hashanah. It's another 2 weeks is Rosh Hashanah. And that's it. The party's over. We're standing in front of our investor, God, and he's going to be asking us, are you a worthwhile investment? Should I do this again? God's sitting in his boardroom saying, let's see. How was his year last year? What's his year next year going to look like? And we're trying to impress God, you know, I really have good plans for this coming year. Right? I really do. I'm sincere. I'm going to change. Right? So, a very interesting thing. The number 40 in Judaism has tremendous power. The number 40 is the most incredible number we have every number in Judaism means something. Every letter means something. But numbers in general in Judaism how many things do we know of the number 7? Like 1,000, right? Why? They all have the same exact essence. The original state, the nature, like a bride circles the groom 7 times. Say that they were meant to be together. Right? This is the natural state that they're getting to. Because it says that really the husband and wife are 2 halves of one soul. The 2 halves of a soul. So now they're getting to their original state. Nature, 7 days of creation. I can give you literally 1,000 things having to do with the number 7. But I'm not going to get into it. We're not going to talk about the number 7. We're going to talk about the number 40. 8, by the way, is the number of above nature. 7 is nature. 8 is above nature. If you look at the miracle of Hanukkah, Hanukkah was a miracle of 8 days. It was above nature. Right? A baby has a bris. A baby boy has a bris on the 8th day. Right? It's saying it's where he gets to a state of beyond nature. Okay, I don't want to get into it too much because we can spend a year talking about numbers. We can start from the number 1, and we'll So the number 40. The number 40 is a really unique number because the number 40. If you look at all of the things that have to do with the number 40, let's start. Okay, we'll list them. Noach and the ark, right? How long did it rain? 40 days and 40 nights. The Jewish people were in the desert for 40 years. When we have the laws of Shabbat, there are 40 laws of Shabbat, 40 main functions, right? 49 laws. Now, they're really 39, so why does it say 40? We'll see why. Right? It says 40 minus 1. Thank you, I can do math. Right? No, it doesn't say 39. It says 40 minus 1. When they give lashes to someone who has sinned, right, the court would give lashes. How many lashes they give? 40 lashes. It was really 39. Again, they need to tell us how to count. 40 minus 1. Right? What's going on here? A bunch of other things that have the number 40. Gestation. 40 weeks. In Jewish law, baby is considered living at 40 days. It gets its first pulse from its brain at 40 days after conception. You have in a mikveh, a ritual bath has to have a quantity of 40 sa'ah of water. It's a quantity, a biblical quantity of water. You think of like a quantity. We think of gallons. We think it has to have 40 sa'ah of rainwater. Why 40? All right. What else do we have in number 40? Right, 40 years in the desert. Moses goes up the mountain. 40 days. Right. So what's with this number 40? We constantly see the number 40. Right. So our sages tell us. The Maharal really says this. One of the great commentators. He deals a lot with this beautiful analyzation of numbers and other great commentaries on the Talmud. He says the number 40 always has to do with a new creation. Always a new creation is the number 40. What happened with Noach and the flood? God says this world is rotten. We got to start all over again. Okay, so it needs 40 days and 40 nights of rain to wipe away the old world, start a new world. Gestation, 40 weeks, 40 days becomes a living creation, right? 40 days becomes a living creation, 40 weeks till it comes to the world. All right. A mikvah, what is a mikvah? A mikvah is a ritual bath. Someone goes in impure, comes out pure. They become a new person. So they need a quantity of 40. What's Shabbat? Shabbat, we know that Shabbat, it says that we get a neshama yitera, we get an elevated soul that gets infused into us on Shabbat. We become a new person. So the laws are not 39, they're 40 minus 1. Right? The lashes, it's for sin, right? Someone needs an atonement, so now they're going to get forgiveness. It's 40 lashes. Now let's think about something. From the first day of the month of Elul till Yom Kippur is how many days? 40 days. And if you look in almost every single book on self-help and change, they have, for some odd reason, they have this magical number of 40 days. You look, you speak to psychologists, and they say you want to change a bad habit. 40 days. It takes 40 days. You want to start a good habit? 40 days. Change the way you eat? 40 days. Change the way you sleep? 40 days. 40 days is the amount of time you need to really change something, to become a new creation. These days that we're talking about now, here in the month of Elul, really, essentially, it's the number 40, the magic of what we're trying to accomplish is not make promises for next year. Say, God, you know something? Next year I'm going to be different. Next year I'm not going to oversleep. Next year I'm not going to overeat. Next year I'm not going to, run after my temptations and desires. And next year I'm not going to be sold to my technology. And next year, how about this year? How about now showing we're going to be different? We have these 40 days to show that change, so that by the time we get to Yom Kippur, God says, wow, this is I don't even know who this person is. It's a different person. It's a different person. They're a different person. And the person, they say, oh, that Aryeh Wolbe from last year, it's a different guy. I can see he's different. He doesn't have the same habits anymore. That's why these days are really important days, why the shofar blowing is done throughout these 40 days to wake us up and tell us, clock is ticking, let's go. Right, it's time for that change to really get into high gear. Abraham, Yitzchak, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Aaron, all asked God for one favor. Okay, we spoke about Messiah. We know there's a time there's going to be we're right now, I know it's hard to imagine, we're living here in Houston, Texas, and the Texans are about to kick off their game, and there's nothing more important, right, than our sports and our entertainment and all of the world that we're living in. We're so busy with so many things we can't even imagine that we're actually in an exile. We really are in an exile. It's the fourth and final exile. Right? If you look through all of the sources in the teachings, right, we'll find that there were 3 really awful ones, and now we're in the 4th awful one. We had a Holocaust, we've had inquisitions, we've had pogroms, we have a sad growth in anti-Semitism wherever we go. We're in exile. It's reminding us we're constantly in an exile. And we're waiting for that day that Messiah will come and the world will see that the Jewish people are God's chosen nation. They'll recognize the Almighty. Okay, great. So in whose merit are we going to have that? And Abraham says, it should be in my merit. Abraham says, it should really, the final redemption should be in my merit. Why? Abraham, what did you do that's so great? He says, you're kidding? I didn't have a child till I was 100 years old. I was 99 years old. And then you asked me to sacrifice my son, and I said, I'm willing to do it. I'm ready to sacrifice my own son, my only son. I'm ready to do that for what? For my love for you. Shouldn't that be enough that the Jewish redemption should be in my merit? God says sacrifice is not enough. Sacrifice is not enough. Isaac comes to God. He says, God, can it be in my merit? It's the Midrash, right? Can it be in my merit? God says, what did you do? He says, you kidding? My father wanted to slaughter me because you told him. And I was pulling the knife over my neck to try to be slaughtered because I wanted to dedicate my life to you. I wanted to sacrifice my life for you. God says sacrifice is not enough. And Jacob says, I was in the house of Lot. I was there for 21 years. He cheated me, and I was loyal. I was dedicated. I sacrificed everything. I could have built a nice business in the meantime, and I did it. I served you properly. I sacrificed everything for you. God says sacrifice is not enough. And Moses brings his story, and everyone, all the way down to King David, everyone is saying, it should be in my merit. It should be in my merit. And then comes Rachel. And Rachel says, it should be in my merit. I gave up my husband so that my sister shouldn't be embarrassed. And if you remember the story, Jacob made a sign with his soon-to-be, with his fiancée, Rachel. He knew that her father was a trickster, and that he would swap the girls under the veil. And that's, by the way, one of the reasons we put a veil on the bride is back to that Jacob and Rachel experience. But here, Jacob is about to go under the chuppah, under the canopy with Rachel, and he walks under the chuppah, and they have the rabbi officiating, and he whispers to her, he says, what's the code word? And she says the code word. He finds out later that it was Leah. It was the other sister. Why'd you do this? Because she knew her father. And she knew her father would put her sister there in her place, because in our place, in our city, you don't marry the younger girl before the older girl. And he's going to do his whole trick on Jacob. And Jacob's going to be there under the chuppah. And he's going to say, what's the code? And she's not going to know the code. He's going to say, this is a scam. I want my real wife. Where's Rachel? And Rachel wanted to protect Leah from that embarrassment. And she knows good and well that Jacob worked for 7 years from her father, who was a liar and a thief, to get her hand in marriage. And for all she knew, she was giving up her husband, her future. For all she knew, she was giving up everything in her life. Who's willing to give away her fiancé to her friend or to her sister just so that she not be embarrassed? Anybody you know? I don't know anyone like that. It's my fiancé. It's my husband, right? And yes.
So that was a sacrifice?
No, that wasn't sacrifice. God says that is selfless. That is going beyond yourself in a way, in your merit. It says,
Somebody else's benefit.
exactly.
That's why it's not a sacrifice.
So here's an amazing thing. If you remember the words, right, it says, Kol berama nishma. We have the crying of Rachel. She says, I want it to be in my merit. And what does God say? Min'i kolech mi bechi ve'inayich min dima. You should stop crying and wipe away your tears. Ki yesh sachar lipe'ulatech. There's a reward for your action. V'shavu banim l'gvulam. Because your children will come back to their land. The redemption will be in your merit. Rachel, it's in your merit because you were willing to change your whole life for your sister. You were willing to give up everything, your whole existence, just so that your sister won't be embarrassed. That is a merit upon which, and we know that Rachel isn't buried in the tomb of the patriarchs and matriarchs. She's not buried in Hebron like the others. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are buried there. Sarah, Rebecca, Leah are buried there. Adam and Eve are buried there. But not Rachel. Rachel says, I want to be buried on the road. Why? Because when the Jewish people are going to be exiled from Jerusalem and head to Babylon, they're going to be passing by my road, and they're going to have a place that they can pray. I want this to be a place they can always come to pray. Yes. Sure.
So how come she stole the idols, Rachel?
What do you mean she's the idols?
She sold
Oh, she stole. Oh.
Her dad's
Because she felt that her husband deserved to get paid for his work. And this was going to be the payment. Right? This was the payment. It wasn't stealing even. Right? This is the payment that was due to her husband for the work he's done. So it wasn't stealing. Yes.
for a wife, but didn't he marry her right after he married Leah? Wasn't it done?
No, 7
No,
more years.
he had to wait another 7 years. During those 7 years, she already had 6 children. During those
I thought I had read somewhere where they were actually married within a short time after.
I'll look into it.
No,
No. I'll look into it. It could be I'm wrong. I don't know everything. So I'll look into it and I will verify. It's very possible.
I always thought that she had to wait the full 7 years
Right.
to become his wife.
Right. It could very well be. You're jogging my memory a little bit. I'm very old, so my memory is right. So the it could be that I remember someplace back there that it was that indeed he did marry her right after, but he had to still work that 7 years.
Yeah, still
Right.
had to work the
Yeah,
7 years.
I remember something like that. I will look it up and double check it.
Well,
Okay.
it's a pledge, another 7 years into
Yeah.
it. Oh, okay. Maybe.
So I want to share with you another couple of amazing stories. We're running a little bit late, so okay. My great rabbi's rabbi, the one I mentioned to you earlier, who closed the Talmud to teach the lesson about kindness. I want to tell you another story about him and what it means to really change and to really become a different person. So, anybody here heard of the 6-Day War? Well, of course, we heard it's one of the most amazing, miraculous wars ever. I want to tell you something about this war that most people don't know. Actually, at the Mir Yeshiva building, I showed everyone this story. Okay, so they have under the building of the yeshiva, they have a big, like a bunker, right? A fortified bunker, and the whole community, when the sirens went off during the 6-Day War, this was day 5 of the 6-Day War. They're sitting under the building, right? And the yeshiva building was hit with a mortar shell, and the yeshiva building was right on the Trans-Jordan border. Okay, it was right on the border. In fact, it's probably about 50 feet from the border, and what used to be the border. Now it's Jerusalem proper. But either way, the building got hit with this mortar shell. And if you look at the building, we saw this. There's a whole area on the top of the building where there's new stone there, right, that they replaced to cover the stones that were blown off the building. But the whole building shook, and everyone inside the bomb shelter was like shook, by the it's very powerful. And a woman stood up, and she cried out, "Chaim, I forgive you." Now the rabbi saw this, and he went over to his students after. He says, "I just want you to know something. The war is ending tomorrow." What war ends in 6 days? No war in history. No. Right. What does the rabbi know that nobody else knows? The rabbi said this war is ending tomorrow. And indeed, the war ended the next day. How did he know? What did he know that was so great that the war had to end the next day? He said an amazing thing. He told his students the following. He says, this woman, who was she? She was a woman, a mother of many children, and her husband one day walked out on her. She never got her get. She never got her divorce document. She never got a penny from him. He just walked out and left. She can't marry anybody else. She's a woman who's struggling to raise her children. She's a woman who's struggling to make ends meet. She's a woman who justifiably hates this guy and doesn't forgive him. This is the way you leave us. This is the way you alienate us. And she found the strength within herself to say, I forgive you. To change on such a level, the whole world changes. It is so powerful for someone to be able to overcome. How many times, it's an amazing thing, you'll think about this for a second. Children on a playground. I take your ball, right? You get angry at me, okay? We fight about it, and then we continue playing, right? That's the way kids are. Adults, you insult me for the next 30 years. I won't talk to you. I won't invite you to my children's wedding. I won't invite you to their bar mitzvahs. I won't invite you to any exciting event that I have. Why? You see, children have something that adults don't have. They have a desire to be happy more than they have a desire to be right. Adults have the desire to be right more than they have a desire to be happy. I'm right. Okay, so let's say you're right. So you're right. So what? But you're not going to be happy for the next 20 years. You're not going to have... I know people have come to me and talked to me about this and said, I haven't spoken to my sister in 30 years because she named her child the same name as I named my child. And come on, really? Is it worth not talking to your sibling for 30 years for that? And people get so small. They get so caught up. They get so... For nonsense. Is it worth it?
How could you help when the situation is not in your hands? For example, your parents, your uncles, or something like this. It's not in your hands. How can you help?
Right. So look, nothing's in our hands. Only our actions are in our hands. Right? I can't control what anybody else does. I can't even, maybe not even influence what someone else does. You have children. You know how much influence you have. Right? Very little, right? You try to create an environment. You try to create a certain circumstance that they grow up with love and endearment and with a passion, right? We try to influence them. We try to give them, but at the end of the day, every person makes their own decision. Every person. I can't decide for anybody else what they're going to do. I can try. I mean, you think about your children, think about your spouse, think about can you dictate for someone what they're going to do? No. They decide for themselves. They have their own mind and they do what they want. The only thing you have is how you can react to it. So someone can be evil and they can be your family member. And you can decide for it to influence you or not. That's your choice. We have a choice of how. Now, I'm not a therapist. But if someone is in a situation where it's really, if there's abuse or if there's something like that, then absolutely that has to be reported and has to be, that has to be taken care of. There's no question. We should never shove anything under the rug. But we can't change what other people do. We can only change ourselves. And here this woman took upon herself, you know what? I forgive you. And it's changing herself. I want to tell you another story. I'll just the idea of changing one trait, one single trait. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, the founder of the Mussar movement, the modern day Mussar movement, he used to say that changing one trait is more difficult than learning and memorizing the entire Talmud by heart. That's 2,711 pages of Talmud. It's more difficult to change one trait, arrogance. Right? Someone has the trait of arrogance. Someone has the trait of anger. It's more difficult to change that trait than to learn and know and memorize the entire Talmud. It's very difficult. But we can take a step. One step. My great-grandfather, I mentioned this last week, worked. He was a man of terrible affliction and terrible pain. And he worked on a single trait for 2 years. To reach perfection. The trait was to greet every person with a smile, with a countenance. You see someone, good morning, how are you? Right? You know what, you're having a miserable day? Nobody cares. Right? Show a smile. You walk into an elevator, everyone's like, nobody. Good morning, everybody. Everyone's day changes. How's your day today? Right? Greeting every person with a smile. You're busy. You're cooking. It's the eve of Thanksgiving. You're having family come in, and your neighbor's child comes into the house. Hi, my mom wanted to know if kid, can you get a life? Get out of here. Okay? No. Yes, darling. How are you today? How can I help you? Even in a stressful situation. In every situation, imagine that in every situation we always greeted someone with a smile. What a different world it would be. It took my great-grandfather 2 years to work on that trait. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. But you become a different person. And then you're talking about a person, I think I mentioned this last week, a person who had terrible affliction, terrible pain, suffering. His wife passed away when his youngest child was a few months old. He had many children. And he was handicapped himself. This is back in the 1930s and 1940s. You didn't have medicine like you have today. You didn't have wheelchairs. He needed someone to carry him every day from his house to the yeshiva and the yeshiva back. Suffered his whole life. Notwithstanding his own suffering, greet every person with a smile. He's in pain. He'll greet everyone with a smile. I want to leave off with one thing. Jacob blesses his children. Unbelievable. He blesses them, gives them great blessings. Now, if you look at the blessings, two of the blessings make no sense. Shimon and Levi. Simeon and Levi. Right? The Levi. What's their blessing? You know what he tells them? You guys are murderers. You guys use weapons to kill. And what is he referring to? He's referring to when their sister Dinah was abducted by the people of Shechem, and which today is Nablus, right, the city of Nablus in Israel, and they make a deal with the people of Shechem, and they say, you know what? Because the people of Shechem say, you know what? Why are we separated? We should just be family. You know, we'll marry your daughters. You'll marry our daughters, and it's like we'll just be kumbaya, and everything will be great. And so Shimon and Levi say, you know what? It's a deal, no problem. But the men will have to circumcise, right? We'll have to circumcise. They say no problem. They do a circumcision fest, and what happens 3 days after circumcision? That's when you're the weakest and it's the most pain. Shimon and Levi come and they kill the entire city. You're not going to make our daughter into a prostitute. You're not going to make our sister, into a. You're not going to treat her like that. We're a family of royalty. No one's going to treat our sister like that. And it's interesting. That's the blessing that they get? What type of blessing is that? So my grandfather writes a beautiful idea. He says, what's the difference between a blessing and a criticism? It's very interesting. So if you really love someone, the greatest gift you can give them is give them loving, constructive criticism. The greatest gift you can give them. That doesn't mean you should go around criticizing people. Loving, constructive criticism. What does that mean? That means the following. So I see someone has a trait, a negative trait. Right? They have a blind spot. We mentioned last week. Everyone has a blind spot. If you have someone who cares about you, they will see that blind spot. There's a car there. Careful, watch out. Oh, I didn't see it, right? That blind spot for us could be our anger. That blind spot for us could be our jealousy. That many, many terrible traits could be in our blind spot. And we need someone to bring it to our attention. Someone who loves you, someone who cares about you, will bring it to your attention. Jacob here is bringing it to their attention. You have a blind spot. You don't realize this, and I want to bring it to your attention so that you can change. But I want to tell you something amazing. I'll tell you why it's even more powerful than a blessing. So I give someone a blessing, you should win the lottery. Does that mean they're going to win the lottery? No. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? I'm putting a goodwill out there. I don't know that it'll ever happen. I give you a blessing, right? You should have a good marriage. Does that mean it's going to happen? Doesn't mean anything. I give a blessing. I put out a good wish out there. It could happen, it could not happen. But if I tell someone who I love, someone who I care about, someone who I thought about how to say this properly, I thought about the right time to say it, and I take the time to say it properly, lovingly, caringly, for their benefit, I tell them that criticism, that 1 ounce of constructive criticism, it's in their power, in their ability to influence that change in their life. They can become a different person because I brought it to their attention. You know, my wife is an amazing woman, and she's never done anything to hurt me. except once, right? One time I walked into the house and something happened and there were people there. I was thoroughly embarrassed to the core of my being. I was so embarrassed and humiliated. And I was like, I left the room. I went to my room. I had to change. And it was raining outside. It was a whole thing. Either way, I changed. And I accepted upon myself that I'm not going to say a single word for 2 weeks about this incident. I was thoroughly embarrassed to my core. And 2 weeks later, I wasn't angry. I wasn't mad. I wasn't upset. I made my wife steak dinner with wine. And we sat there at the table and we're talking and we're having a good time. And I felt that at that moment, 2 weeks later, now she's not upset. I said, just a quick little note. 2 weeks ago, and there's no emotion involved. 2 weeks ago, something happened. And I just wanted to bring it to your attention. I'm sure you didn't intend for it to be insulting. I'm sure you didn't intend for it to be embarrassing. But it embarrassed me. My wife didn't even realize it. And she apologized profusely for it. And she said, it didn't occur to me. I'm so sorry. I feel terrible. I would never have said it. I would never have done it. I would never, right? And the whole thing was cleared away. It's as if it never happened. Now imagine the alternative. Imagine right when it happened, I'm like, excuse me? Right, what would have happened? You can imagine. World War IV would break out, right? The whole argument back and forth. Just to wait a little bit, where that criticism can be accepted in a right time, in a right place, with the right thinking it through. I know this person. In what way can I say something that will be effective so that, and obviously, that has never happened again, obviously, and it was such an amazing learning lesson for me that if we, sometimes we criticize because it bothers us, right? It bothers me. And I'll tell you, the Talmud says something really, really, really shocking about criticism. It says that he who criticizes is actually seeing their own flaw. Right? Kol haposel bimumo posel. You see someone, you tell them, why are you such an angry person? You know why? Because we see our own anger. We criticize someone, why are you so stingy? Because we see our own stinginess. We see someone else's negative traits, but we're really seeing they're a mirror, a reflection of us. So we need to find, the Talmud says, just like it's a mitzvah in the Torah to criticize someone who will listen, it's a mitzvah not to criticize someone who will not listen. If you know they will not listen, it's a mitzvah to keep your mouth shut. Don't say a word. Well, how am I going to know? How am I going to know if they're going to accept it or not? Well, if you don't know that person well enough, you have no business criticizing them.
Diffuse the situation.
That's right. Yes.
I just want to say, I have an older brother who gave me some good advice years ago when, as far as anger and someone confronting me with anger. And his advice was to me was, just walk away. He just told me, just walk away. Just always remember that. And
Right.
trying to remember that.
Sometimes it's difficult to
it's difficult, but
yeah.
those are the words to remember, which I think fit right in with
So
diffuse and walk away.
change is a very difficult thing. Especially we inherit certain characteristics and traits from our parents, from our grandparents, right? This is things we've seen, how they react to certain situations. So we adopt those situations, those responses as well. And it's a very important thing for us to learn how to change them and become a different person, right? My father, He's a great driver, but he's a very aggressive driver. He doesn't like he's an Israeli. He doesn't like to wait for anything. And it was just recently, and it was something I worked on. It's something I worked on for many years. And just recently, my father was here, and there was a car trying to merge into my lane. I said, "Please go right in." My father's like, "I would never do that. I would never do that." And he's like, I don't know how you have the ability to just let them in. I'm like, it's been a lot of work, right? To change is a big thing. And criticism, this is so much to talk about, but we're running late here. So next week we're going to continue talking about small steps, a very, very crucial and fundamental principle before we start talking about actual traits, to talk about small steps. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to
Comment,
sure.
Rabbi, if I may. You started out your talk today, I missed last week, apologize.
Forgiven.
No. But you started out today speaking that the key and the purpose is to bring what we intellectually know down into the heart. Otherwise, it won't stick with us.
It won't go into action.
It won't be practical in our life. So how to bring it from the head down into the heart, that's going to be, really quite an interesting.
We have a lot of work here.
I see. Getting it to the heart.
That's right. Because the heart is the bed of our actions.
That's what I was going to say.
Right.
That will come out every time.
That's right. So we have to take it from here to here. It's like you have the corporate office where they decide how the business is going to be run. But if you don't actually tell the people in the field the change that was decided in the corporate office, nothing's going to change, right? So you have to. How do you transmit that message effectively to the all the stores, right? That the corporate office made a change in policy, right? That's the idea. There's so much more to talk about here. I wish I can continue for longer, but I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you for listening. Thank you for all of the listeners online. Thank you for listening to this podcast. My name is Rabbi Aryeh Wolbe, and we're coming to you live from Houston. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yasher
Any
Koach.
questions? Any questions? Yes.